Thank you so much for joining us from Mauritius. Um, while I was trying to put up this panel, I was reading some news articles that had specifically spoken about Mauritius, and I read that a man was arrested after he falsely claimed that riots had erupted after the Prime Minister announced the close of supermarkets and shops. And a woman who had published a sarcastic meme about, the government closing or something was arrested because of the spread of the fake news. So my question to you is, what measure is the government of Mauritius taking to ensure that the freedom of speech and expression of the citizens is protected while the regulatory measures to control the spread of such misinformation is implemented?
Thank you very much, Priya, and thank you for inviting me to join this panel. And as you have said, rightly so, it's a conversation that must be maintained and sustained so as precisely to encounter the scourge of fake news that has cost, as you have rightly said again, countries' elections and even the lives of innocent people on issues ranging from ideology, religion, amongst other issues. But I think the question we have to ask ourselves, how did we get there? Fake news, I think, is a symptom of deeper structural problems in our societies and media environments. Social media, as has been said by the previous speaker, is empowering people who were never heard before and is creating a new form of politics and turning traditional news corporation inside out. So that century-old craft, as we call it, journalism, is in danger of being lost. And this has happened, we must also bear this in mind, only over the past 20 years. So the new news that is replacing journalism is here to stay, unfortunately, and not just changing the face of journalism, but also the very concept of authority and power. And as the previous speaker had just mentioned about the age, the median age for those accessing news from print, 6% of young people between the age bracket of 18 to 24, they access news on print, whereas 65% relied online and social media. And in fact, the World Economic Forum has also identified among the top perils of society, alongside cybercrime and climate change, is precisely the spread of misinformation. So granted, fabricated information has always existed. What is new in this contemporary version tendency to spread globally and at an extraordinary pace? So we have seen clickbait headline, made up stories typically spread faster than the well-researched articles of established news channels. And what is most disturbing, as you have rightly said, is not so much the amount of fake news on social media, but where it is purposely directed. And it is increasingly being said now that, truth lives in a gated community, whereas fake news is everywhere. And I think part of the problem, the underlying problem of fake news, is the fact that the big tech companies have appropriated and monopolized the online advertising market. And this has led to as pay-as-you-go business model in which advertisers are only charged when the page is viewed and clicked. So people are earning from clicks. So this ensures that social media companies have no incentive to playing the role of arbiters of truth. So seen from this perspective, proposed anti-fake news law focus on the trees rather than the forest. So as such, this will not only remain irrelevant, but will also aggravate the root cause fueling the fake news phenomenon. And as you all know, market in sensational, conspiratorial, and alarmist junk seem to thrive in inverse proportion to the fortune of all media houses plodding through the path of traditional reporting. How are we faring in Mauritius? We have Article 12 of our Constitution of the Republic of Mauritius. It talks about freedom of expression. And this is in line, of course, as we all know, with Article 19 of the Declaration of Human Rights adopted in 1948, immediately after the Second World War. So alongside the freedom of expression, as enshrined by the Constitution, we also have the Data Protection Act, which protects people's right to privacy. However, in Mauritius, we still do not have the Freedom of Information Act, which would, in my opinion, complement the Data Protection Act. And Freedom of Information Act grants the public access to information processed by government agencies unless the information falls into a category that is specifically excluded from the terms of legislation. So government officials, as we speak, they still have to sign the Official Secrets Act. And also, we do not have a press council, as operators have verged on self-regulation. So I'm a bit doubtful when companies and corporations propose to self-regulate. If you don't have a press council, I think we are where we are in terms of damage that can happen. So in the era of internet, and in 2001, the Information and Communication Technology Act was proclaimed to provide for regulation and also to provide for the democratization of information, communication technologies, and related matters. And as you have rightly mentioned again, there have been 2 incidents recently, but the ICT Act covers most of the provided information services. And the breach of that act are hefty fines. And they can go as much as 1 million Mauritian rupees, which would turn out to be something like, I think, $30,000 US, and imprisonment as well. But what happened in 2018 is also significant. There has been a modification in the ICT Act with the purported view of protecting against fake news. Now, what happened is that this new provision would make it an offense to post any message, whether in the form of speech or sound, data, etc., etc. And what's the writing here is quite interesting, and I think this should be open for debate as well, is that a form or combination of form that is likely to cause or cause annoyance, humiliation, inconvenience, distress, or anxiety to any person. Now, this amendment went far as removing the burden of the plaintiff to prove that the intention of the user was to cause annoyance. Now, the penalties, as you know, are very high, and now they can go up to 10 years imprisonment. Some can argue that this will deter the spread of fake news, but others are seeing it as a means to silence critics or settle score with opponents or anyone who can get arrested, as you have said, through the posting of even satires on public personalities. So where does freedom of information stop, and where does the law start, from where it starts? So I think this can open a window if we adopt this kind of legislation. It can be a window, yes, for preventing the spread of fake news, but at the same time, as we have seen elsewhere, and I think we have seen this with the pandemic, how much of our civil liberties do we give up for the common good? So these are questions that we can debate. How do we address fake news? Do we address it through state intervention? I think many countries have done this. Are we going to see emerging a minister of truth? Who is going to be the arbiter of truth? Are we going to make social media platform liable to third content for circulation, exactly as what Germany has tried to do? And I think France also went down to that same route. And they've had, of course, established that they have to have within 24 hours, remove obviously illegal content and all the rest of it. Or is online disinformation a complex phenomenon that regulators have yet to master? Therefore, it is too soon to create a regulation that can be effective. Nonetheless, something has to be done. And I think some tech companies, some tech owners, they are trying to what is called sampling fake news with the truth. So instead of killing the story, what they're trying to do is surround that story with related articles so as to provide more context and alternative views to the reader. In other words, the social platform hosting the disputed news alters the content in which that story is presented and consumed. So this is what Facebook is now testing, what we call swamping approach on a voluntary basis. But it could be mandated by law across virtually all social networks. And we have seen recently how Twitter has also trying to fact check some of the president of the United States tweet. So I think all these remain open to the way we're going to proceed to actually counter fake news. But we agree that it is something which is much deeper than just posting a meme or just, presenting something in some form. I think there's much more to it than meets the eye. And I think we have to start looking at the fundamentals as to why people are doing it. And also, how do we ensure the freedom of what people have enjoyed, the freedom of expression? how, because all these are enshrined in the Constitution. I'm sure even in the United States, they will start looking at all these because, you know, Amendment 1, Amendment 2, I think Amendment 2, they actually, you know, enshrine also freedom of expression. This is also very true in France, where, you know, freedom of expression is enshrined in the Constitution. You can't touch it. So all these will remain to be debated because just countering it with the law is not going to help. So we can come back on all these afterwards. Thank you.
So, Amina, ma'am, what's your thought on this?
Thank you very much, Priya. You know, this issue here, there is, for us, I think, well, I want to say us here, I speak about the women folk. I will come back to this very quickly. There is a huge economic issue which is linked to clicks, as we know, right? People's reputation are destroyed. We're living in a very mercantile world where earning is much more important than just trying to get to the truth. So that's one reality we have to live up to, that, you know, there is a huge commercial aspect of it. Of course, sensation sells. There's no doubt about that. Now, if we were to actually promote truth in this era of fake news, there are two ways. If you know already the website, I think you have to go into a digital literacy to check and to promote that and to check whether this website is credible. Then you'll know whether the news is credible, because I think increasingly a lot of these very, very strange websites which actually circulate all these news are coming out. And the other thing, if you're getting something on other social media platforms like WhatsApp, you know, and, you know, all the others that go with it, I think if you're not sure about the identity or whatever is being shared, I think one has to stop and think and check before sharing. Now, WhatsApp has limited it to 5 people will start sharing, but at some point, just at one click, you just have a group of, and you just go on. Messenger is still there with about 50 or 45, whatever it is in terms of numbers. So I think our responsibility to actually contain this infodemic, as you have rightly said in the very beginning, of spreading fake news is first of all to go and check the veracity of what is being said. Then it's only then that you share it if it's going to add to anything of use, if it's going to add to sharing proper information. And you rightly said, when during the pandemic, I've seen all sorts of recipes going around, and you know that it is not going to help the cause. So I think it's the responsibility of the person not to share this kind of fake news. If it is a website, go and check. And I think as academic, as mentors, we have the responsibility to ensure the people have this digital literacy before they start sharing this. Now, the other thing about women folk, I mean, I have to make this point all the time, and I make it all the time. The women are increasingly being demonized on social media and mounting all sorts of images and circulating all these around to demonize women, to actually blackmail women. That's also becoming a norm nowadays on social media. So again, this is a plea we have to make to men folk when they're getting these images. Be responsible. Do not share it left, right, and center. It could be leading to somebody's suicide. It could be helping destroy a family or a woman's life or something. And this is something we have to wake up to this narrative as well. Please, let us not share blindly the information. Let us check the veracity of whatever is coming in our phone or in our computers before we start sharing. Thank you.